Welcome to ZKast, everyone. I'm Zias Caravallo from CK Research, and I'm joined today by Carolina Milanesi from Creative Strategies. Carolina, your first time on ZKast. I'm thrilled to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, for those who don't know you, you're very well known in the analyst circles. So, but perhaps for the few that don't know you, just a quick intro on yourself and what you do there.
Sure. I've been an analyst for longer than I want to admit, a long time. And at Creative Strategies, I am the president and a principal analyst. I cover pretty much everything that is the intersection of consumer technology and enterprise. Future of work is one of my coverage areas, AI. But my background started a long time ago at Gartner, covering mobile and PCs.
Oh, well, not that long ago, I guess. But no, you are, like I said, you're certainly very well known in analyst circles, and it's good to have you. Now, we were both at the Cisco Live EMEA event in Amsterdam, and I think that's an event you and I have both been to before. At least I had. So now, what I like about the event is it is a Cisco Live event, so there's a lot of technology talk, but you do get a good flavor of what's happening in that local region, right? And so, we had Jeetu delivered a pretty long keynote. Oliver talked a lot about, the region, things like that. Were there any kind of aha moments or key takeaways for you?
There were a couple of things that stood out for me. One is really how the story of a business is coming together under Jeetu is really taking shape. I've been a little bit of a critic in the past about the fact that pretty much every business model was siloed, and you didn't feel the power that Cisco has in bringing everything together and delivering that value to customers, but not just that, differentiating themselves from the Zoom of the world when it comes to WebEx, as an example, right? Where you're bringing the collaboration piece, the security piece, and the networking piece all together. And I think that, with G2 really bringing that together is making a difference, not just from a storytelling perspective, but how the company is thinking about the different parts of the business and the different products, and starting with the customer first and the problem to be solved, and then kind of looking at the pieces that need to come together. What I like, though, about the approach and how they're thinking about it from a platform perspective is that they're meeting the customer where the customer is at, right? So there's the idea that from a platform point of view, better together, but if you're coming in and just wanting a piece, you can still do that. And those, to me, were the two things that stood out. But then the other one that I think maybe for us coming from the US right now seemed a little bit different was the optimism that there was as far as the opportunity in the market and the growth opportunity. And I think maybe some of it is because, Cisco has had a couple of good quarters now. And so there's definitely momentum that they see. There's a new leadership. But those were the kind of top of mind things that stood out for me.
Yeah, for me, and your criticism of Cisco is something I think a lot of its leading analysts have shared. And it rightfully deserves. We were, talking as we're preparing for this, that even within the silos, there was a lot of individual development going on. Like, you think about the collaboration group historically, what the on-prem group did was different than what the WebEx team did. I remember, I don't know, a number of years ago, the Meraki team sent me a phone because Meraki had its own calling platform, which was different than WebEx, right? And within the network silos. And so I think G2 has certainly pulled a lot of that together. In fact, it was interesting because we did the 40-year anniversary tour of the products.
That was super interesting.
And one of the things Gordon said was he talked about how what put Cisco on the map in the communication space was Avid, right? Which stood for the architecture for voice, video, and integrated data. And I was a VAR back in the Avid days, and customers just inherently believed that if I ran Cisco VoIP on a Cisco network, it worked better. I don't know when that stopped, but sometime in the mid-2000s, Cisco moved away from that architectural story and more to one of silos. And since then, I think it's really hurt the company in its ability to sell Cisco, right, the company, as opposed to the Catalyst product, the ISR, WebEx, the Cisco Pix, Talos, things like that. And so it's good to see Jeetu bringing that back, because I think it is important. And we are starting to see some evidence of that too, right? Obviously, he's only been in the chief product role not even a year, so how much one Cisco can we see? But if you look at things like the Thousand Eyes integration, it was about 18 months ago, I asked Joe Berger from Worldwide Technology what he wanted to see out of Cisco. And he said more Thousand Eyes. He said that's the best troubleshooting tool there is. And it was a siloed product. They haven't done much with it. And since then, they've put Thousand Eyes on all their devices, on all their network, the equipment, on their room bars, things like that. And so now that Thousand Eyes capability is pervasive across Cisco and does give them an advantage. You look at even Cisco Hypershield, where they're trying to distribute enforcement across the network. Well, you can't do that if you don't own enforcement and the network. And right, so there's a lot of small examples that we're starting to see. And I think it's interesting that every speaker we heard talked about the work Jeetu's been doing. And so that man somehow came in from Box, and now he runs all our product at Cisco, but he seems to have them pointed in the right direction. On the optimism side, they have had a couple of quarters. One of the interesting takeaways for me, just from a non-Cisco perspective, was Oliver's frankness about the importance of this moment in time for the EU, where he seemed, to me, overly optimistic about the EU, but he's hoping that AI creates a rallying cry for the EU to act as one. And he's German, and so for him to admit that Germany as an individual country isn't really all that important in the global scheme of things. France as an individual country isn't all that important, right? And so, but when you combine Europe, it is. And I was curious to your thoughts on that, because I know you cover a lot of trends, but I am worried about Europe.
I think I share more the optimism in terms of, with everything that is going on with the US politics, I think this might be a moment for Europe to get even tighter together, and rely on each other from a strength perspective, from a country perspective, to be ready for whatever action might be coming in from the current administration in the US. That's the only reason why I'm optimistic in terms of, Europe has always been performing better under pressure, so to speak, right? So I think this might be the moment, as we have seen already, in Canada, for instance, where, there's a very strong Buy Canada movement right now. And I do think that the concerns around, not just from an economic perspective, but also the influence that the administration could have on the Russia-Ukraine war, might get Europe to work nicer together.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll see. But I guess nothing rallies everybody like a common enemy, right? So
absolutely. And I think that there must be some concerns as well about the pace of innovation around AI coming from China with DeepSeek. And if I have to think about China, Europe, and the US, Europe kind of falls a little bit in the middle as far as helping push forward innovation, and at the same time also very much looking at regulation, right? I think that they're somewhere in between. China, we know from a government perspective, they're very, very keen, because they want to be seen as leader in financing and cutting corners to help development and innovation. And Europe is a little bit in the middle. I don't know where the US is right now, but yeah, that's another off the air topic.
Yeah. Now, at every Cisco Live, they do announce a number of products. Were there any? And I know you're not really super deep on products. Were there any that caught your eye and really stood out for you?
I think from an AI perspective, the idea that you're taking AI and embedding it in the network the same way as you embed security in the network is interesting, both because it will help Cisco differentiate, but also helps their customer, push forward. It was interesting. You and I had a couple of conversation about the role that Cisco could play in helping their customer accelerate that adoption, right? And I think that Oliver kind of convinced me that they're right in terms of working more with their partners and helping their partners help their customers versus trying to do it directly through the CX business. Because I think that, you and I were talking about this, I don't know that many companies would necessarily trust Cisco to help them rethink their business with AI, but what they would trust them 100% in putting their network so that they can sustain, their AI rollout. So that was, that idea of embedding was an interesting one. And then from a product philosophy perspective, I also like how Jeetu wants to think about Cisco as an Apple, and I mentioned it on Twitter as well, that that verticalization is going to help them deliver a more differentiated product. But also, to your point earlier, the idea of better together and strengthening really the delivery from a customer perspective.
Yeah, the analogy to Apple is interesting because I think of all the companies out there that deliver platforms, nobody does it better than Apple, and it creates a scenario. In all full disclosure, I got an Apple Watch on, I got an iPhone here, right? Things like that. And when a new iPhone or a new phone comes out, I never consider buying it because I'm so tied into the Apple ecosystem. I use iMessage, right? I use AirDrop and things like that all the time. And so, in fact, even when, we're sitting in the audience and we're pushing stuff to social, I take pictures on my phone, I AirDrop it to my laptop, I then post it using my laptop, right? I couldn't do that if I actually went to best of breed devices. And so I think again, we're starting to see some examples of that, with AI Defense, Hypershields, the Thousand Eyes, but this is really the mission for Jeetu, is to create more and more of those magical experiences, particularly around AI. And I wanted to get your thoughts on AI in Cisco. I do think that the role of the network is still largely underappreciated. So I think there's
100%
better days for Cisco ahead. But from an overall market perspective, if you were to ask your average IT pro, name your top 10 AI companies, it would be NVIDIA, AMD, maybe OpenAI, Cohere. In fact, all the ones that were at the AI Summit, right? It wouldn't be Cisco. In fact, I'm not sure Cisco cracks the top 10 or top 20, maybe not even top 30. And so what do you think Cisco needs to do to be part of that conversation?
I don't know that they need to be part of that conversation. I think that they need to be seen as a key enabler in the same way as NVIDIA is, in a different way, right? Like in terms of you need the network. People talk about you don't have AI without the data. Well, you also don't have an AI if you don't have a network. Because especially going forward, I'm a strong believer of hybrid AI. It's not going to be all in the cloud. It's not going to be all in the client, right? You're going to have that back and forth depending on what you're doing, depending on what kind of data you're dealing with and how you want to keep it on premise or not. So the network becomes even more critical. And I can guarantee you that nobody thinks about it till you don't have it, right? Till you're not connected to something. So I do think that in that sense, if they're able to land how critical the portion that they have, and it's not just any network, is a secure network, right?
Yeah.
And you and I talked a lot about the nuances of secure network versus secure networking is different, right? If I can land that, then I think they will be part of a conversation in that way. I don't know that I care that they're seen as the AI thought leader in terms of workflows or anything like that. That's not their role, and rightly so. But yes, as a key enabler, the same way as silicon is, which actually, as I think about silicon, was another thing that was interesting from the event, is the first time that we've actually had silicon as part of the conversation as much as it was at this event, which is about time, because I do think that that Cisco has something differentiated here with Silicon One, and they should talk about it more.
Yeah, Silicon One's interesting because I think that, and we're part of the problem, I guess, that the industry tends to over-rotate on certain trends, right? Like everything is going to move to the cloud. And I think in networking for a long time, people thought everything would move to software. In fact, Cisco themselves largely talks about their prowess in software today, right? And if you think about what it takes to create an optimized network experience, there's some things best done in silicon, some things best done in hardware, and some things best done in software. And right. And so, and even the whole concept of a network processor in Silicon One, it's kind of easy to understand, especially now that NVIDIA has become so popular. Like the whole reason a GPU exists is because general purpose processors didn't do graphics very well. And so NVIDIA created a chip which would. Similarly, general purpose processors don't do certain aspects of networking very well. Deep packet inspection, high performance routing. So Cisco built their own.
I'm going to pretend that I understand what you're talking about now. Okay. So yes, I know.
But Cisco built its own silicon to do that. In fact, at scale, it's actually cheaper to build your own, and certainly Cisco builds more network devices than anybody. And so, but I think as an innovation company, Cisco really hasn't. Everyone, in fact, Jeetu admitted this, that Cisco had become a very acquisitive company, and a lot of their innovation had come from that. But I don't think Cisco had done a great job of reminding the world of all the innovation they've done internally. And I find it kind of interesting too, that when does something become a Cisco innovation? Because if you look at a lot of the AI stuff, people go, well, they acquired that from MindMeld or whatever, right? And it's like, well, that was 4 years ago. Like eventually that stops being the acquisition.
Absolutely.
And so I think
it'll be interesting because Splunk is one of those acquisitions, right? Where now you already started to see the synergy between the two parts of the business. And so I was talking to a customer during breakfast yesterday, and they were talking about Splunk and ThousandEyes together in terms of how you manage the data and in relation to their sustainability product. So I agree with you. It's not just, you don't just acquire it and that's it, and there's no more work to be done afterwards.
Yeah. Now, was there Splunk's an interesting topic too. There wasn't as much Splunk as I thought there was going to be, which actually I was pleasantly surprised. I think they're doing the work now to integrate Splunk into things. And if you look at the combination of Splunk plus ThousandEyes or Splunk plus AppD, even Splunk being used as a network troubleshooting tool, it was good to see. I don't know if the network engineer audience who is in the audience really fully understands all the capabilities of Splunk, which is maybe why we didn't see as much of it. But I don't know, were you expecting to see more Splunk? I was.
Yeah, I was definitely, from mentioning the name more often, but I also agree with you that is actually a good sign that we didn't, in terms of it does feel that the company has come together really quickly, even in, during our meetings. The effort that the Splunk team is making in really getting assimilated, but not in a negative way, not like actually disappearing, but keeping, their DNA of more startup like, if you like, type of culture, but really, using it to augment and improve the Cisco part of it, and learning the other way around. So, and I do think that culture wise, actually, they're very well suited for each other.
Yeah, I do too. So, all right, Carolina, any other thoughts you have? I think from an overall perspective, I thought it was a good show. I think the work Jeetu's been doing on the product side, the company is rolling now from a product perspective.
Yes.
And I'm expecting more of this in a bigger way at Cisco Live in June, and the US one. But any closing thoughts from you?
No, I think that overall is exciting to see them coming together as a product. I had some other conversation around what's coming on the WebEx side that for now I'll keep between us versus your audience, and I'm excited about that. I mean, some of it is public. I had the opportunity to do a demo with Apple Vision Pro and the WebEx cameras.
That is really cool, actually.
And he blew me away.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see what's coming there, talking about innovation. And and in general, actually, one thing that I will mention that surprised me, there wasn't as much talk about sustainability as I was expecting. And not because of the Cisco side, but in general, it didn't seem top of mind in Europe as I was expecting it to be, being somebody that, I cover sustainability in quite a bit of detail. And I was thinking it would be more of a topic, and it wasn't, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I guess people just getting on with it.
Yeah, that I was, given we're in Europe, like I still say, the people in the US don't really care too much about sustainability outside of from a marketing perspective. They do in Europe.
Yeah.
And it was interesting when we talked to Guy Diedrich, right? He said he had come back from Leap, and he said, I think it was him who said this, that for the last few years, sustainability has always been a hot topic at Leap. And this year it really took a backseat to security, AI, and skills. And perhaps AI is so heavily dominating the world now that we pushed sustainability to the background. I don't know
and we shouldn't, because the two are very much intertwined. But you mentioned skills, and that was maybe the only thing that we haven't talked about. That was very present as a topic on stage, and the fact that its lack of skills is one of the key reasons why Cisco is saying their customers are not rolling out AI at the pace that they maybe should or could do. And I do think that the Networking Academy here has an opportunity to help, as well. So yeah, that was the other part. We don't hear in the US the topic of lack of skills as much as we heard here, even coming from customers that we talked to.
Yeah, actually my last one-on-one there was with Parmarat, who runs Cisco Learning, and one of the changes they've made on that side, on the certification side, is they're trying to be more in lockstep with the product group. And again, this is the benefit, you credit Jeetu for creating a single product group. That brings, because historically what would happen, and I was talking to Par about this, is that Cisco would roll out some new products or move into an area, and then a year or two later, you'd see the curriculum for the CCIE or CCNA or whatever change to reflect that. Now that creates a 1 to 2 year lag in product capabilities and certification, right? And so now they're trying to be more in lockstep. And if you look at all the new modules they've brought in to the certification programs that can help you add AI to ladder up to CCIE, I mean, it's as close as you can get to the product rollouts. And I think that's an important part of it. And I think, while we talk a lot about products and we talk a lot about this innovation and G2 and this and that, it's that base of engineers that's historically made Cisco successful. And if they can't bring that engineer community along for this AI ride, they're not going to be successful no matter how good the products are. And so it was good for me. I was very pleasantly surprised to see how much they've changed that certification organization to keep up with product.
Yeah, that's interesting, because certainly as much as, you see colleges changing some of their kind of full leadership in the curriculum side of thing, there's more that the private sector is going to have to do to enable skills from an AI perspective, because the technology is just moving way too fast.
All right, Carolina. Well, so I think from both our perspective, thumbs up on Cisco Live EMEA.
Yeah, absolutely. Other than the weather. The weather could have been better.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping they decide to do it in southern Italy next year or something like that. So a little warmer would be nice. So,
Yeah.
And so anyways, certainly enjoy your thoughts. Had pleasure having you on my show. Hope you come back
Thank
again
you.
sometime. Yeah,
Absolutely. I very much enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
So on behalf of Carolina Milanesi from Creative Strategies, I'm Zias Caravallo from ZK Research, saying thanks for watching. Give us a like and hit the subscribe button. I'll see you next time on my next episode of ZKast. Thanks, Carolina.